4th of December 2024. I really need a shave. Hello to everyone out there. Sorry it was a bit late getting started today. Not YouTube's fault for a change. Literally just lost track of time. So that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. Really good to see you all out there. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about critical thinking. So I've called this video, Who Wrote This and Why? And this is something that I think of quite a lot when confronted with stuff like memes that you read on the internet, or just any tweet posts, blue skies, whatever they call themselves, threads, whatever you read on the internet. The first question that everyone should ask is, who wrote this and why? And one of the big problems that we've had over the last sort of 25 years with the advent of the internet and it becoming an integral part of everyday life is that you have an entire generation of people who take pretty much everything on face value. So they have grown up in a world in which you went into the bookshop, you went into the library to get some information, and it was very clearly labeled fiction, non-fiction, with arrows, right? On one side or the other side. We don't have that anymore, right? And as a historian, someone who did history for A-levels and studied it in university, who wrote this and why is one of the most critical questions. It is the basic question that you ask when confronted with any information about the past. Who wrote this and why? Was it a contemporary? Was it someone there? Was it they on the side of the people who won the battle or the people who lost the battle? Or did they have no skin in the game? Did they, for instance, was it a historian talking about an event that happened 500 years earlier? Who informed that historian? What were the motivations of and why? What were the motivations for writing this down? It wasn't just like, oh, I can write stuff, I will write about this battle. No, they must have been there or heard about it or had a personal connection to it. What was that personal connection? And so looking at everything that you read and with that through that critical lens of who wrote this and why is something that everyone should do. But this, I'm not having a go at people who are older. I'm just saying there was older people, not all older people, but they grew up in a time when if there was something in the newspaper, generally speaking, it was true. Because if it wasn't true, then the newspaper would get sued or they would lose their honor or something like that. That all went out the window with Murdoch and the Sun, and obviously what the horrific headlines that we saw with Hillsborough, absolute bullshit, blaming the fans for what happened. Hello, looks like you're back in Little Britain. Not yet. So David. But yeah, any books that you read would have had to be published. And generally speaking, I mean, Eric von Daniken aside, whatever his name was, Chariot to the Gods aside, like most books had to, if they were talking about a person, especially a person who was still alive, they had to get the facts straight. They had to get things, the ducks in a row. They couldn't just make shit up. But whereas, historical epics, like you'd watch something like Braveheart or something, they'll play a bit fast and loose of what the actual history was. But I feel like even then, there was a bit of a backlash back in 1995 or whenever Braveheart came out against the fact that some of this history had been embellished by the filmmakers. And I think there was an understanding that people went, well, that's not actually what happened. It's kind of what happened, but they did play a bit fast and loose with some of the historical events. But now it's overwhelming. It's like everything you read on the internet is like Braveheart. It has a bit of truth in it, maybe, but it's surrounded by a pack of lies. Or it's got a bit of lies in it, and it's surrounded by things that actually happened. And we need to fortify ourselves against this, and we need to start asking this question: who wrote this and why? Especially when it's an anonymous meme. Like, why are there so many memes about how bad lithium is? Like, why is lithium seen as the mineral, the element that people have to hate? That's the bad one. Oh, lithium, that's the bad thing. When you're watching this on a phone or a laptop, which has a battery in it, I presume, unless you're watching it on your TV, and that will be a lithium battery. So you've got lithium in the thing that you're literally watching this on there. But apparently lithium's the worst material in the world to make things out of. Worse than asbestos, worse than lead for pipes, worse than fuel, worse than petroleum and gas and coal, which obviously it's not. It's clearly not. The damage that it does is clearly a lot less than the damage that fossil fuels do. But vested interest, isn't there, in continuing our use of fossil fuels until the species is dead. And so when you are confronted with a meme is just the worst as far as I'm concerned, because they're uncredited, they're almost always misleading, and an advertising slogan in an industry that is not regulated at all. So imagine you could just say what you liked in an advert. You could just say, yes, this car does 1,000 miles to the gallon. No, don't buy that other car, because they're all paedophiles. You know, everyone who works for that car company, nonsense, every single one of them. Imagine they were allowed to say that on the TV. You'd be like, what? How can they get away with that? But when it comes to memes, people can get away with it. And so the question has to be asked, who wrote this and why? But also, when we look at political discourse over the last few years, I was talking yesterday about how the right wing absolutely dominate the narrative of the land, and they control the means of communication on every level. So you've got Rupert Murdoch owning the tabloids, Lord Rothermere owning the Mail, Richard Desmond, the smut peddler who used to own the Express, his dirty dealings with the Tories. You've got Elon Musk owning Twitter and turning it into a cesspit of hatred and lies. And then you've got, the fact that he's tended to 4chan as well. And then there's a guy who I've never heard of, some billionaire who owns the LA Times, who wouldn't endorse Kamala for president, and Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, but he also owns Washington Post, who would not endorse Kamala as president. So yeah, these people have got a lot of money. Like, why would they want this? Whose interests is it served to make people think that lithium's a bad thing? The petrochemical industry, obviously. They want to sell fossil fuels. The fossil fuel industry, let's say. I suppose you could argue that lithium is a chemical. The fossil fuel industry is huge and mad and insane. Like, the fact that we have tens of thousands of ships moving across the oceans every day, burning all this bunker oil, this dirty bunker oil, when they could be propelled by the wind, they could be propelled by solar. There are ways of doing it, or at least, given a bit of a bump by the natural elements that we can harness, that we have harnessed over, when it comes to the wind, that we've harnessed over literally thousands of years in order to propel large objects across the water. It can be done, but there's no interest in it. Why? Well, I'll tell you why, and I don't want to diss Maersk and CMA CGM and Hapag-Lloyd and other companies that help me out on my travels around the world. But you tell me, 40% of all travel around on these big container ships, big cargo ships, 40% is moving fossil fuels around. So where's their interest in slowing down the use of fossil fuels? You know what I mean? That's the difficulty. And then we'll talk about the environment. When I go pagan, will be happy to hear this. The lies about climate change not being real. The lies that have been put out there. Who's putting them out? Why? Whose interest is it to say that lithium's bad, to say that we need hydrogen for some reason, because that's the most efficient way of moving a car? It's not. Just use electricity. Whose interest does that serve at all? Like, there's a great documentary which I mentioned before. It's called Who Killed the Electric Car, and it was made 25 years ago, and it was about, there was a law brought in the state of California saying that by 2010 or something, 20% or whatever the percentage was of all new cars had to be zero emission, i.e. electric, not hydrogen, because that doesn't really exist. Okay, so except in concept cars. So, a real actual thing, EVs, been around since the 1890s. We actually invented the electric motor for a automobile before we invented the internal combustion engine as a species. So, been around for a long time. And they gave out these, they were kind of forced to sell these EVs. And one of them, the EV1 or whatever it's called, which was made by General Motors, was great. People loved it. It had 150-mile range on it, which is fine. Got people to work and back. And but they wouldn't let people buy the cars. This is the interesting bit. No one could buy those cars. Why? Well, because the fossil fuel companies and the car companies are in cahoots with each other, and they're like, we don't want people using that EVs because it means that a lot of the infrastructure that we build, and a lot of the trucks that we build, and the engines, not just for the internal combustion engines of cars, but also for cargo ships as well. Someone's got to build those engines. Kawasaki built those engines, these companies build these engines. And they're like, looking at the bottom line, they're like, well, there's not much to go wrong on an EV. I mean, the electric motor is a pretty easy thing to put together. And there's not many things to go wrong. It doesn't have all the 27,000 different moving parts of an internal combustion engine, for example. Slightly exaggerated there, but you know what I mean. And so they wouldn't let people buy these cars because they didn't want people having electric cars. And at the same time, they spent millions, perhaps billions, millions, lobbying for the Republicans to get in the state of California, which they did in about the year 2000. And one of the first things they did was they backheeled this law about by X date, X percentage of new cars have to be zero emission. They got rid of that law. They scrapped it. The next day, literally the next day, representatives from the big car companies, Chrysler, Ford, GM, turned up at people's homes and said, we want our cars back, because they weren't allowed to buy them. They could only lease them. And part of the lease in the small print was that they could take the cars back at any time. Anytime they want. They take them back. So they said, we want to take them back. And people were like, no, I'm quite happy with my EV. It's great. It gets me around, sorts me out. I don't want to give it up. No, sorry, this is in the small print. We can take it back at any time. So they recalled thousands of these cars from people's homes all over California. And then they stripped them of parts, crushed them into little cubes, and then dumped those cubes in the desert. And there's footage in the movie of them. They find like thousands of these cubes in the desert, and they were all EVs that were crushed by the car companies because they don't want people driving fucking electric cars. Who's telling you this and why? Why are people constantly saying about being environmentally friendly is woke and all this kind of nonsense? In the same way that we never had, and I've mentioned this before, we never had this backlash against the banning of CFCs in the 1980s because there was no vested interest. Like, no one was making literally trillions of dollars a year of pure profit to waste on yachts and blow. No one was making that kind of money out of CFCs. They're making that kind of money out of oil. And for them, long may that continue. They don't care. They know they're not going to be around in 40 years' time. Give a shit. Very interesting that the very same people who are trying to destroy the planet as soon as possible are the same people who are like, oh, we don't pay inheritance tax. We don't have kids paying inheritance tax. I'm like, what do you care? You don't care about their lives because, you're making their lives more difficult, as we know. So yeah, I look at nearly everything now through the lens of not just who wrote this and why, which should be standard. That should be like what everyone thinks when they read anything on the internet. Who wrote this and why? Where's the source? What's the source? Name your source. And what was their motivation for writing it? Was Richard III really a hunchback, or did he just say that to make him sound more evil? That turns out they found his body and he was. So there you go. Well done, Willie Shake Shake. You got that one right. But going back to Caligula, Nero, were they as bad as they? Was Bloody Mary as bad as she as made out? Because history is written by the victors. Well, it's not really. History is written by people who were there. It's written by people who were there 100 years later, referring to someone that they were told by somebody else, whose grandfather was at the battle. History is written by a multitude of sources. Your job as a historian, or let's just say your job as someone who uses the internet now, is to look at the motivations behind, look at what's written and then look at the motivations. So if you look at, there's the old thing about three people see a car accident and they give a report to the police, and they'll get three slightly different reports. They'll all give a report based on their prejudices, on what they saw, on the lighting, on what they recall, because what you remember isn't exactly what you remember. What you remember isn't exactly what happened. What you see is your brain's interpretation and what's coming through your eyes. It's not like a camera. It's not recording the photons like a camera does. What you hear is your brain's interpretation of those sounds, and your brain can make mistakes. It's the most complex thing we know of in the universe. Your brain, the human brain, is insanely complex, and it goes wrong. You think of simple pocket calculators can go wrong. Pretty simple. I mean, your phone can go wrong. That's pretty simple compared with the human brain. I saw a great cartoon the other day. It was like this scientist or whatever, or it was a computer program, and he said, "I've made a robot that gets everything wrong." And the other person's like, "Oh, great, let's put it on everyone's phone." Obviously referring to AI, which literally gets everything wrong. It's almost hilarious now. Like the number of times I've had to retype things into ChatGPT and say, "Did you actually read the whole document?" "Oh, no, you're right, I didn't read the whole document." Anyway, little off subject there. More complex than the knowledge of the universe. Has Graham been arrested? Free Mr. No, I'm not been arrested. Not been arrested. Arrested development, perhaps. I'm just in a mystery location for this week. Next week, I'll let you know where I am. Anyway, so going back to what I was talking about this idea that when something happens, people get a different experience of it, and they'll write about it or talk about it, and to them that was real. That's their lived reality. But to anyone else, it might have been, well, that's not quite what happened. And so we need to keep that kind of open mind, but to quote Richard Dawkins, not so open that your brain falls out. But I do find it really interesting the way that when if someone believes one conspiracy theory, they'll believe them all without question. That they think critically about anything that they sort of disagree with, but anything that's like a conspiracy, that must be the case. It's straight on to the most idiotic, complex strategy, whatever you call it. There's complex, motivations and machinations to achieve a goal, which is usually very poorly defined. Let's talk about the 9/11 conspiracists for a moment. So we're led to believe that the US, in order to invade Afghanistan, and I can't stress this enough, there is no oil. So in order to invade Afghanistan, they pretended that a group of Saudis, not anyone from Afghanistan, but from Saudi Arabia, which is a few thousand miles away from Afghanistan, they pretended to destroy these buildings, and 3,000 people disappeared, and they were taken to the desert to live their life in the desert, and they were going to blow up the buildings anyway. And the fact that the planes crashed into the buildings shouldn't have made the buildings collapse, because steel only melts at a certain point, and jet fuel isn't that. The idea of structural weakening being caused by a fire. You get a metal bar, you heat it up, and then you can bend it, because that's what materials do, generally speaking. They don't tend to get harder the more you heat them up. But, all these things aside, you've got to have a conspiracy that involves thousands of people to be complicit, to not say anything, for a really badly defined goal. We want to invade this third world basket case developing country, Afghanistan, that's been in a state of perpetual war since the invasion of the Soviets in 1979, or was it 77? 79, I think. The Soviets left, it descended into civil war, the Taliban took over. It's got hardly anything in terms of infrastructure. It's not a big, it's got no oil. I can't stress this enough. It's got no oil. It's just like, oh no, they're going to build a pipeline from where to where? Pakistan to Iran? Is that where you're going? You know those countries are adjoining to each other. So where's your pipeline going? Tajikistan. It's going to. Why would you build a pipeline through the freaking Hindu Kush mountains, the highest mountain range in the world? Why would you build a pipeline? Where you taking the oil from? Where's it going to? I don't understand. You're taking it from China and it's coming to Iran, because Iran's not our friend either. So you've got Iran, not our friend. Pakistan, barely our friend, but you're going to put an oil pipeline through Pakistan into India. You know they don't like each other. You know they really don't get on. It's just, and where's the oil being pumped out from? Azerbaijan? Why would you pump? Why would it go anywhere near Afghanistan? I don't understand. So for me, thinking geopolitics, geography, history, the art of war, whatever, it just seemed like just a weird thing. But not only do you need to find thousands of people who are complicit, you've got to ask a question. This is the question. How much do you have to pay them each day to keep them quiet? Because you've got someone who is that morally corrupt that they are happy to see the deaths of 3,000 of their own country men and women and children, and yet they're not morally corrupt enough to say, no, I want £1 billion a day, please, to keep me quiet. I mean, it makes no sense. And so when I see a conspiracy theory that someone posits, and I go, who's saying this and why? Oh, it's someone who never studied geopolitics. They never studied history. They don't know anything about how anything works, and they're coming out with this. There's another cartoon where it is literally thousands of scientists, and there's one person standing against all the scientists. But I saw a video on YouTube, and it's like, yeah, that's what it's like. But we're given this kind of false analogy. False analogy, is that a good way of putting it? We're given this false dichotomy, I guess, where people are told that they need to believe this particular thing, but not that particular thing. And there's a lot of money, a lot of lobbying, a lot of input into that industry. I mean, it is an industry of manipulating people. It's propaganda. It is pure propaganda into believing what you want them to believe. And the wartime propaganda that we saw during World War II, for instance, Lord Haw in Germany broadcasting, to Britain saying you're all losing. Then you had the leaflet drops of, the soldiers, the black soldiers who were fighting with the Americans. They got leaflet drops saying, in Germany, you're not segregated. In Germany, you're allowed to attend schools with me. Yeah, right, mate. But that's the propaganda. And that wartime style propaganda has now seeped its way into peacetime. And people, when they're confused, they're very easy to manipulate. And I've mentioned this before. Derren Brown, one of his ways of getting people to do daft things, like give them their watch or their wallet or something, is to confuse them. So you meet someone, and instead of shaking their hand, you grab their wrist, and they're thinking, why did he grab me? And then you do something weird. You just do something weird, and that confuses them. And when people are confused, then they're much more easy to manipulate. And because the real world and the amount of data, the information that we're given every day about what's happening in the world is insane, lots of people feel confused. And when you feel confused, you feel stupid, and that makes you angry, because you're like, why is this ticket machine making me feel stupid? I'm better than this. I've got a PhD in physics. Why can't I operate this ticket machine? And this is the way that they manipulate us, by confusing us, bombarding us with information, and then going, what do you think? And most of us don't have time to sit there and think. We're getting on with our lives. That's why I've got no problem with people who aren't particularly political. It's fine. Some people aren't. I don't think that voting should be compulsory for that reason. Some people just aren't asked about politics. You shouldn't force them to be, because they're not going to make good decisions. They're not going to make decisions that are in their best interest or the best interest of the country if you force them to do something they don't want to do. In fact, they're more likely to kick back against it and go, well, you're going to force me to vote, I'm going to vote for the Conservatives then. See you later. Maybe Graham is in a travel talent and the equidistance between London and Norwich, says Harry Flashman. Maybe I am. But the fact remains that the way that the industry, and it is the fossil fuel industry more than anything else, but obviously cigarettes do this, done it very successfully for many years. The weapons companies do this very well to prolong, to this idea that everyone needs a gun. We all need to defend each other, to defend ourselves. We need to have, armies, and we need to blow stuff up, and we need to have the fastest jets and the biggest ships and all this kind of stuff. Because there's money to be made. There's money to be made. There's money to be made out of war. There's money to be made out of suffering. There's money to be made out of all that. And what I'm coming around to is the kickback against climate change is probably the most frustrating one, because you have a situation in which we are going to die, like literally horrible deaths, if we don't do something about climate change. It's going to be horrific. But there's so many vested interests in us continuing to burn oil. And it's not just the oil companies. It's not just the car companies as well. They have a vested interest in the internal combustion engine. And they always will. Like they're very, very reluctantly moving towards EVs now. EVs should have been just a thing 50 years ago that everyone was just getting on. Who's he talking to, says Alex French. I don't know. I thought I was talking to you. My odd appearance has actually had people to remember information I've imparted to them because I've stuck in their minds. Some people confuse it with a drunk tourist. I'm really confused with what's going on in the chat, but thanks for joining us. But coming back around to the fossil fuel industry and climate change. And climate change is something that's going to affect every single one of us. But it's not just the fossil fuel companies that are going to do well out of it. It's tyrants. One of the reasons why Putin gave just enough support to al-Assad of Syria during the Arab Spring uprising of 2011, just enough to fend off ISIS and fend off these rebels in Aleppo and other places, but not enough to win, not enough to destroy them entirely, was because he wanted to create refugees. Why would Putin want to create refugees? Because refugees are absolutely brilliant at destabilizing countries because of their existence. Because when you have refugees coming in, you have half the population saying, oh my God, the people with the heart, saying, these people are fleeing war, we need to help them, we need to give them everything they need. And then you've got the other half of the population who are like, well, they're coming over to my country. Why don't they go to someone else's country? They get all these free things. Why do they get free things? I don't know. Well, I don't get any free things off the government. Apart from your education, mate. You got that, didn't you? In the NHS, you get that, don't you? Yeah. Your hip operation, did you pay for that? No, you didn't. No, other people did. Yeah. But tell me again about all the free things that you don't get. But yeah, the way of getting populist demagogue gobshites to power, as seen time and time again around the world, is to flood those countries with refugees and then have everyone kick off about them. And when the means of communication is owned by the likes of Murdoch and Elon Musk, then the amplification of that message that refugees are a bad thing, refugees are terrible, refugees are messing everything up. It's the epitome of the state of the modern world now. It's this lack of compassion, empathy, and critical thinking coming together and producing this disgusting monster, which is populism. Which is Donald Trump, which is Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, and people who these demagogues who give simple solution to complex problems, make people confused, make people scared, give them simple solutions to end their fear, end their and then you can be happy again. But what's happening in the States now is it's so heartbreaking to see that people are having to pack up their entire lives and move either to another state or to another country. Trump's going to annul. He wants to annul. I mean, it's in Project 2025. He wants to annul all the gay marriages, and if he does that, then married gay couples with kids, if they've adopted those children will be taken off them. I mean, it's going to tear apart families. Trans people in America are quite understandably terrified right now. And I'll tell you now how deep this terror goes of what Trump is going to do. I made a video a couple of weeks ago, and remember I was having that argument with Mikey, where I was like, but he'll be able to do what he wants. He'll just kill everyone. He'll kill protesters. If anyone protests outside the White House, he'll order someone to shoot them, and they'll do it. And Mikey's like, no, the army will say no. They don't have to listen to him. I'm like, what, are there no psychopaths in the army who just want to murder people? I think there are. And they can just say they were just following orders, and Trump is above the law, and Trump can pardon them anyway, so who cares? Like, he's got to pardon all the January 6th rioters. But here's the thing, right? Why would President Biden, after years of saying that he was not going to pardon his own son, suddenly now at the 11th hour pardon his own son? I think, this is my theory, that Joe Biden fears for his son's life under President Trump's tyranny. A couple of things here worth bearing in mind. Trump could have Hunter Biden killed legally, because that's the rule in America now. The other thing is, why did Donald Trump, and this is the question you need to ask everyone who voted for Trump, whatever, why did Donald Trump have his very good friend Jeffrey Epstein murdered in jail? No conspiracy theorists ever talk about that. It doesn't fit into their worldview, does it? Because a lot of conspiracy theorists are Trump voters. He's managed to get that QAnon lunatic fringe to go for him. So when the president of the United States of America is scared for his own son's life, if he goes to jail and Trump is in charge and Trump decides to kill him, there's no comeback. There's no justice. And that's why I think he's done it. And that concept alone is fucking terrifying. And that's why I think he did it. That's why I think that if Kamala Harris had won, Hunter Biden would not be getting a pardon. I can't back that up with, empirical data, but read between the lines here, folks. So if Donald Trump has successfully terrorized the current most powerful person in the world, the US president, before Trump himself becomes the most powerful person in the world, where does that leave the rest of us? Especially people in the queer community, trans people, gay people, gay couples, married gay couples, people who are Hispanic, who he said, he's called them garbage. He's talked about how the Mexicans are all rapists, which is a bit rich coming from Donald J. Trump, who is a adjudicated rapist. Then you've got people who, black women in particular, and obviously women in general, because of the abortion ban that is going to come in nationwide. I think this is going to be the fracture point of America, when you tell women in California that they can't have an abortion because of some Saudi-like Taliban rednecks in the Texas Taliban. down in the deep south who think that abortion is murder for some reason. Again, a triumph of propaganda, because don't forget, in the 1970s, like the Southern Baptist Church or whatever it was called back then, supported abortion. Because Jesus said nothing about abortion. There's nothing in the Bible about abortion. Can I eat meat on Fridays, Mr. Pope? No. So I can't eat this chicken? No. Can I eat this egg? Yes. Why not? Why can't I eat an egg? Isn't that a chicken? No, it's an egg. But you're saying that the egg isn't a chicken. Oh, okay. So it's okay to eat. Along with beaver, for some reason. You can eat beavers in Brazil on a Friday because it's classified as fish. But there you go. So a human egg, as soon as it's fertilized, becomes a human. But a chicken egg, which can be fertilized, if you eat it quick enough, there won't be a little baby chicken there. That's an egg. No, completely different things. Just what? I bet he releases Epstein's girlfriend too. Yeah, Trump will pardon Bannon and Maxwell. Yeah, it's absolutely what he's going to do. I think he'll reward Ghislaine Maxwell, the paedophile monster woman who basically honey trapped women, dozens of women, maybe hundreds of women over the years, young girls, into having forced sex with grisly older men, which included people like Trump and Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew. These gruesome old rich men who got to do what they wanted because they were rich. Don't care about the consequences. Don't care what happens. And he's going to do that. So yeah, I'm maybe in a way you're watching this thinking too little, too late, Graham. And I know that I've spoken about a few of these themes before on the shows over the years, but I really do feel like now more than ever, we need to really be fighting back against this disinformation and misinformation that's out there. And the question needs to be asked, who wrote this and why? What's their motivation? And 99 times out of 100, especially if it's bullshit that's out there, it's a bad actor. It's someone who wants to create division, wants to make money. That's the bottom line, isn't it? Follow the money. Why is someone saying this? Well, because they're getting paid to say it. But then people share it who aren't getting paid, which really messes with my noggin. It's like, why would you share that if you weren't getting paid for it? But then they assume that we're getting paid for doing this kind of thing. Because why wouldn't you get paid for this? And I hate that assumption, because it's like, do you ever have that thing where someone assumes that you fancy them and you really don't? And you kind of get a bit offended. You kind of like, no, I really don't fancy, I don't know why you think that I do. I mean, sorry. And then you feel bad because I don't know, fancy it, but at the same time, it's like, why did you think I fancy? I don't know. I just think that people are just, there. Is Graham in hiding? Yes. I'm hanging out with mate Terry Waite. He's just in the cupboard over here. Mother Nature created us, and she will eventually deal with us accordingly. Well, I don't know about Mother Nature. She wants us all dead. One Angry Pagan, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Yes, ultimately nature will upend the fascist wave. No, I don't think, I disagree. I'm sorry, I think I disagree. I think it's going to get worse. What will happen with Trump in power is there'll be an emergency. There'll be a big storm, a flood, a drought, a something that is caused by climate change. They manufacture these emergencies. When people get bored in SimCity and they turn on the Godzilla mode. We're going to get something like that. We're going to get the equivalent of Hurricane Katrina, for instance. And Trump is going to use that. They know it's going to happen. I mean, it's one of those things that a lot of those people who say they don't believe in climate change, know it's real. I mean, the first groups to suss out that climate change is real and it's happening wasn't NASA. It wasn't the fucking, the science department of East Anglia University. It was the oil companies. And they sat on that data for 10 years. They used the data to put out, applications for oil explorations in areas of the Arctic that they knew would be melting and that the ice wouldn't be as thick in years to come. I mean, they knew, they all know, and they know that they're lying. They don't believe that climate change is not real. They know it's real, and they have made policies for their companies based on the fact that climate change is real, and that the Northeast Passage is going to open up throughout the year because of the change in climate and the fact that the world is warming up, and that Antarctica is greening at a just terrifying rate, and that the sea levels are inching up, as we saw last week on Ginger Island. We were having tides where almost the entire, the northern third of the island is bloody underwater. I looked at the satellite map last night, actually, of Ginger Island, and if you go on Google Earth, you can actually go back over the years, and you can actually see from space, from the satellite imagery, you can see where the area where the island's just turned into black mud because of this constant flooding, and it kills the grass, it kills the shrubs and the bushes and the plants and the trees, and you can see it. You can literally see it compared to the years before where it was all green. It was a nice green triangle, the island. Suddenly the top, inverted triangle, the top of the triangle, this part of it, a third of it, is just black. You can see it from space, and that is caused by the water coming in. And if it had always been like that, if the tide wasn't getting higher, it's just, that's what happens to the island, there would be no grass there to start with. You could go back and look back over the years of what was on the island, and you wouldn't see grass, because how could there be grass if it was continuing to get flooded? We are seeing climate change happening in real time, which is terrifying, because these kind of changes should happen in geological time. Like, they shouldn't happen over the period of a handful of years. We're already at 1.5 degree of warming above the average temperature at the beginning of the 20th century, and it is going to get worse. And we are, the bath is full, and we're continuing to pour more and more water into the bath, and we're like, no, we've got to stop the bath from filling up. And the idea that we're going to take a little thimble and we're going to scoop out a little bit of the bath and we're going to put that underground, it's like carbon capture. It's just it's for the birds. It's mental. It's just mad. It's like, how can you even think for a second that that's going to work? It's clearly not going to work. But yeah, loads of people have been convinced of this. Not the people working for the oil companies, they know it's bullshit, but the people who don't want to believe it's true. Because what is the first stage of grief? Denial. He's not dead. She's not dead. They're still with us. They're still with us. They're still with us. I mean, one of the main reasons or drivers for the creation of man-made religions is exactly that, is the denial of death. I don't want that to be the end. I don't want that to be the last time I ever speak to that person. I mean, for me as an atheist, it is tough shit. The universe don't care. They go back to being exactly as they were before they were born. Not in pain, not suffering, not bored. How many trillions of years do you have to spend in heaven before you've done everything? Before you've insulted everyone in the universe in alphabetical order? How long do you last before you're like, I just don't want to exist anymore. Please, just take me away from this existence. It's awful. And that was quite interesting. I watched The Good Place, which is a really funny and very clever show. It's very philosophically based, but also there's a lot of humor in it. And at the end, sorry, spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched the end of The Good Place, just skip ahead for a minute or turn the sound off for a minute. They go to The Good Place, and it's shit. Because everyone's bored. No one's got anything to do. Everyone's going mad, because they can't die. They're just stuck there in this place, and it's nice, I guess, but there's nothing to do. And the idea is that at the very end, people get the choice to just stop existing. Great, do that thing where I want that. But yeah, and I suppose, in a way, I'm not going to turn this into a conversation about religion, but there is an element of denial of reality that comes with any religion, of the idea that the reason why things are the way they are is because ... right? Is it because of the laws of thermodynamics and the Big Bang and evolution over 4 billion years on this planet? No. It's a wizard. The wizard came along and went doop de doop de doop and made things and changed things and did this and did that. And like, I guess this is where me and religion, we go our separate ways. I don't mind them as constructs for moral behavior, like a moral guidebook of like how to be a good person, which they're not always, to be honest with you. But let's go along with that for a moment. It does bother me that it's kind of like we have some of the most amazing stories of all time to tell scientifically. The fact that all our DNA is related. Your DNA is related to a giant redwood tree. That's just brutal. Yeah, we all had a common ancestor with a tree. We're all connected. That's amazing. What about the fact that since the beginning of life on Earth, you are the product of an unbroken chain of successful reproduction? Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. That's pretty bloody cool. That's very cool. Literally billions of organisms lived and died, leading to you. And we're made of stardust. Come on. What, you're a woman, would you rather be made out of Adam's rib, or would you rather be made of the dust from the explosion of a dying star? Like, explosion of a dying star, I'll take that one. And don't forget, 7% of you is hydrogen, which came from the fucking Big Bang. 7% of you, the atoms that make you, are 13.7 billion years old. Pretty cool. I prefer that one. I like that story better myself, rather than it was a wizard. A wizard did it. We had a super chat come in. Thank you very much for the super chat from David Faulkner. You shouldn't believe in conspiracy theories, full stop, because all theories are unproven. If you believe in unproven theories, it's simply an act of faith. That doesn't mean you can't engage with them. Critical thing. Yeah, which is why it's unhelpful when it's called the theory of evolution. They need to think of another word, because people get confused with conspiracy theory, which is generally bullshit, with the theory of evolution, which has been proven time and time again. Every time you make a big step forward in the investigation of the fossil record, or when we unlocked DNA, when we did the human genome, when we found all this junk DNA in our DNA. I mean, 94% of our DNA is junk. It's deactivated. We don't use it anymore. What was it for? Because we're building a tail. It was for our gills, which we don't need anymore. I mean, I suppose you could reactivate that junk DNA somehow in the future and grow humans with gills, I suppose. But the fact that DNA is still in there, the hard drive has never been, defragmented. We never got rid of it. It's still part of our genetic lineage. Our evolutionary story is written in every cell in our bodies, in our DNA. It's a bit fascinating, that, isn't it? We need to start reversing it yesterday, says Dark 4x4. What? The evolution. All of my DNA was junk. No, it wasn't, Gary. I mean, most of it was junk. That's true, because it's just, they call it junk DNA. It's DNA that's not activated. And then can be safely ignored. But they found like the genome of like an earthworm is like longer than the genome of a human. Like, it's just stuff like that. It's just mind-boggling. So they've gone through more evolutionary changes over the years than we have. I mean, we're 99.4% the same DNA as chimpanzees. It's very cool. There'll always be periods of boredom in eternity, but imagine what you'll miss out on if you're not around for, say, 1 billion years. Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Dark 4x4. It was said that if atmospheric CO2 levels pass 400 parts per million, climate change will become a self-exciting problem. We passed that in 2016. Wouldn't matter if just stopped all CO2 production now. Yeah, there's more. We're well over 425 parts per million now, I think. And yeah, that's the highest it's been in millions of years. And the thing is, when scientists talk about climate change, it's not like they're pulling figures out their arse. They've actually gone and done the hard yakka of none of these conspiracy theorists who say that climate change isn't real, none of them have released a fucking weather balloon, and measured the CO2 in the atmosphere. None of them have drilled for oil. Oil, probably I'll actually drill for oil now. Drill for ice cores in the Antarctic or in the Arctic, where they can go through and check out the microorganisms stuck in the ice and work out exactly how many how many parts per million of CO2 have been stuck in the ice for thousands of years. They've not done that. They've not done that. They've seen a meme. They've seen a meme that says, "Oh, it's nonsense. It's just made up." They're just trying to consent. And that's the other thing. Like, you're being alarmist. I hate that. Like, what? You run into a house because it's on fire, and you shout to the people in the fucking house that's on fire, "Your house is on fire. You need to get out." And they go, "Stop being so alarmist." What the hell? This is a matter of life and death. Freaking out because you didn't like the sequel to a movie. I mean, that's being a bit over the top, I think. But a matter of life and death for millions of people? No, I don't think that's being alarmist. And to bring it all together, you've got the rise of populism, the rise of demagoguery. Why has that happened? Because of refugees coming across the Mexican border, coming across from Africa, coming across the Middle East into Europe and America, respectively. So that's causing this rise of the demagogues. And climate change is driving that as well, because it's not just wars that are causing people to have to leave their homes. They're also having to leave because of constant flooding, because the desertification of the Sahel region of Western Africa, for instance. There's a lot of different reasons, but it's going to get worse, and they know it's going to get worse. And by Putin, who's the USSR, sorry, Russia as it's known today, the Muscovites, they are one of the biggest fossil fuel, dirty fuel exporters in the world. Of course, it's in their interest, just at the bottom line, to sell as much of this, dinosaur juice as possible. I know it's not from dinosaurs, but it's in their interest to do that. But also, it's in their interest to drive climate change. There are people out there who aren't just not doing anything about climate change. They're actively trying to make it worse. They're trying to burn as much of these petrochemicals as possible to create as much CO2 and other greenhouse gases that go into the sky, through not just from burning from your car, but also from air conditioning machines, which creates a lot of, it's a H3 or something. There's a particular chemical that comes from them, which is like really bad. Like it's X many times worse. Methane, obviously we talk about cows farting. That's another greenhouse gas that gets into the atmosphere. Really not good. But it's in their interest to drive that, because more climate change means more refugees. And what does more refugees means? More instability, more demagoguery, more knobheads being in charge, and more wars. And that helps the people who make machines, because they get to make more machines. And instead of someone buying a car and it working nicely for 10 years and then buying another car, they need to make tanks, and they need to make armored personnel carriers, and they need to make this, which then get blown up, and they need to make more 6 months later. Ka-ching! Follow the money. Follow the money. And we need to start calling this out. I hate the way, I mentioned earlier about that cartoon. There's like thousands of scientists and one person who saw a meme. there's a John Oliver skit on Last Week Tonight. It's a few years ago now, but it's perfect. It was like, how come on every single talk show about climate change, you always have a scientist who's generally a bit nerdy because they're a scientist, and probably not a good public speaker, didn't study the radar, didn't do public oratory at the Oxford Union, versus someone who did, who knows nothing about science, but is very, very good at rhetoric, like very incredibly good at gish gallops and rhetoric. And they present it as if it's a 50-50 argument. And John Oliver's point was like, actually, 99% of scientists say that climate change is real and it's happening. So if you're going to have one climate change denialist on the show, you need 99 scientists all shouting at them at once, saying that's bullshit. Because that would be the actual, weighing up. The BBC needed to take note of this. The BBC is awful for this false equivalence of, their opinion is worth as much as all this scientific data. It's not. But we need to recognize that it's not just people who are going on these shows denying climate change. They're not doing it just because they're being paid by an oil company, which they are. They're also doing it because they want the climate change. They are disaster capitalists. They want the disasters. They have sat down and they've looked at all the awful things that will happen as the weather gets worse, as flooding gets worse, as droughts get worse, and the fact that that's going to cause people to panic. And when people panic, they spend loads of money. Don't forget, in the coronavirus pandemic, the big companies, the big money people, doubled their wealth. They doubled their wealth. They sprang up from like 56 billion to over 200 billion. Like it just massive overnight, because people panicked and people were like, shit, we need to get some toilet paper, and all that happened. And yeah, you still have people today going, oh no, it was the government telling us to lock down because they want to control us or make us. That was another thing during COVID. Like people, oh, they're just trying to make us scared. They're just trying to concern us. They're just trying to alarm us. And I'm like, no. Why would they? Like literally, why would they do this? Because when there were some winners, and there were obviously some winners like Amazon and Netflix and stuff, there were also a lot of losers in the coronavirus pandemic, especially with small businesses. If you're a business owner and you'd only been paying yourself £11,500 a year, taking the rest out as tax-free dividends, you might have been doing all right for a few years, but as soon as the pandemic started, you were stuffed, mate. You were absolutely stuffed. As a lot of self-employed people were. So so because it was based, how much money you got off the government during that time was based on how much money you spent in tax. So the less tax you paid, the less money you got. Yeah. Anyway, so birds just mini pterodactyls. Yeah. In Japan, they're still wearing face masks. Yeah. People do around the world. I've seen people, on my travels still wearing face masks. I mean, in Japan, generally speaking, if you and other Asian countries, if you have a cold, you wear a mask. So it's not to stop you getting something off someone else, it's to stop you spreading germs. And it's just seen as politeness and etiquette. In the West, people are like, oh, I have to wear a mask. I've talked about this before. Why was there such an outrage amongst the Lawrence Fox, neo-aristocrat, Harrow, Eton, Winchester crowd, country crowd, what countryside alliance? Why was there such an outcry amongst that lot in particular? You didn't get too many working class union reps on the TV saying, my members shouldn't have to wear face masks. It's disgraceful. It's a crime against humanity. You did get a lot of very rich whingers, nepo babies like Loser Fox, whinging incessantly about having to wear face masks. And it was simply, and lockdown in general, and it was simply because they have lived that rarefied life where nothing is, the rules that apply to everyone else don't apply to them. If they get a fine for something, they can afford it. It doesn't have a big impact. They get away with it. In the same way that a rich person will park his Ferrari outside of, the department store on Double Yellows. They don't care if he gets a £30 ticket. Give a shit. 30 quid. I'm a billionaire. Chicken feed. In the same way that, why would a water company spend billions cleaning up the water, cleaning up the sewage, when they can just dump it in the rivers and pay the fine, which is pennies for them? And keep the money coming in, keep the dividends coming in for the shareholders. True story. We're talking about the pterosaurs are a separate lineage. Yeah, I think chickens are closer to T-Rexes, aren't they? Yes, my cousin worked in Japan for a while. She described it as a society displaying external consideration for others. Yeah. And when somebody gives you something, you have to take it with both hands. They'll give it with both hands and you take it with both hands. Very important. I just liked when I was in Central Asia, When you met someone and you shook their hand, they would shake your hand and they would put their hand on their heart and they would bow forward slightly. I was like, that was really nice. It's like this respect, respect. And it is funny that the same sort of people who go, the problem with kids these days is you don't have any fucking respect. And it's the same people who have no respect. They have no respect for politeness, manners, being a nice person, not being a troll, not being a gobshite. They have no respect for science. They have no respect for learning, for education, for people who went to university. And it's a big thing on the right as well, isn't it? Like they hate people who went to university. Kemi Badenoch moaning about what's university educated people, and you're like, yeah, why don't you like university educated people, Kemi? Why don't you like them, Kemi? Explain. Oh, because they don't vote Conservative. Well, the rich ones do. The very, very rich ones who went to private school, they all vote Conservative. But the rest of them, yes. Will there be any gay dinosaurs? Yeah, absolutely. There's all gay animals. Like every animal species has gay animals. I want to do a documentary about it called "It's Just Not Natural," and it follows the lives of all these different gay animals. Lions, incredibly gay. Like basically the females do all the hunting. So when the females go off as a pack to do the hunting, the males just lie around having sex with each other. True story. And then you've got penguins, they can be gay. Giraffes, incredibly gay. Sheep, gay. Lots of them. Dogs can be gay. It happens all over the animal kingdom. It's the same as being left-handed. It just, for humans, it just happens. It's my right hand, by the way. It's like being left-handed. It's just the way you're born. It's just, you can't help what you fancy. As long as it's not hurting anyone, then what's the problem? Lou Graham, sorry, paleontology is my area of study and has been so since I was a child. Yes, but one angry pagan. The question is, right, why, when a pterodactyl goes to the toilet, do you not hear anything? Because the P is silent. What do you call a dinosaur that sits on a cactus? A megasaurus. Okay, I'll stop the dad jokes. Right, anyway, so circling the wagons back to what I was talking about, because we're going to wrap up in a moment. It's been over an hour. When it comes to anything that you read these days, and any internet video you see, even this one, the question you need to ask is, who wrote this or who made this, and why? What's their motivation behind it? And every time you see this manipulation, and we can all be manipulated, we can all fall for it. We can, we've got to keep our guard up all the time, especially online, because we'll read something, we'll go, yeah, I want that to be true. I do this. I'll read something on about Boris Johnson or Donald Trump or something having, I don't know, syphilis. I'll be like, oh God, I hope that's true. But I won't forward it. I won't pass it on to anyone else until I've done my due diligence and looked it up. Has it been reported on reputable news sites? And not just one news site, like the BBC, CNN, Reuters. Just have a look. Has it been reported? If not, it's probably bullshit. One of the things that has been annoying me this year is there's some really good commentary online, political commentary and stuff about the war in Ukraine, but it's tempered by the fact that there's I think it's like the military show and the Times Radio, and they talk about the war in Ukraine. Like every day, it's like Putin is finished, the economy's dead, the war is over. Putin he's got AIDS and he's gonna die and all this. And it's like it's never true. It's propaganda. And I'm like, why can't you just give me like an objective view of what is happening in the war in Ukraine? Because it's not really being covered in the major news channels at the moment, because they're distracted by what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in the US, what just happened in South Korea yesterday, which was mad, which we haven't mentioned, but oh my God. So the Prime Minister stood up and said, we're gonna have, or was it the President? We're gonna have ourselves a martial law. Hey, Marshall, you're in charge. Marshall looks up. Oh, thanks. I am the law. Um, and the Parliament and the people said no. What the hell, dickhead? Basically, the executive's separate to the legislature in South Korea, and the leader has been isolated since earlier this year because the opposition have the power over the legislature. So anything that he wanted to do, or they were just shooting down. And so, instead of just going, okay, fair enough, I think I'll just resign. I'm a lame duck leader. I think I'll just resign. No, we're not going to do that. I'm going to declare martial law, something that hasn't happened since 1979. I'm just like, oh my God. Glad it was put down, but, a bit of a scary precedent for what's going to happen in America next year. Like confirmation bias, also something to stay incredibly wary of. Yeah, One Angry Pagan making a very good point there about confirmation bias, and we all fall for it. We all do. I mean, we want things to be true, and if things fit in with our preconceived notions, it can be very difficult. Which is why I try to give, I always think of when an allegation's made, especially in a sexual nature, against a celebrity, my first instinct isn't to give them the benefit of the doubt. My first instinct now, and it wasn't always like this, is to give the victim the benefit of the doubt. Like, why would they lie? Why would they make it up? And when a group of women, like this guy from MasterChef, a group of women come forward and say that he's said and done inappropriate things, or when it's Russell Brand, my first inclination now is I'll believe the victim. Thank you very much. You need to prove yourself, because it doesn't happen to people who, that when it comes to celebrities who are probably off their heads on cocaine most of the time, they probably don't even know what's going on, what's up and what's down. I don't have any kind of loyalty to them, and that goes for not just celebrities I don't like Russell Brand, but it also goes for celebrities that I do like Neil Gaiman. I'm really, really upset that these allegations have come forward about Neil Gaiman, and it's the preponderance of evidence that I've seen. And I'm not one of these people who goes, no, it must be proven in a court of law. Jimmy Savile's crimes were never proven in a court of law because he never stood trial for his crimes. I still think he did them. But yeah, I think we need to kind of reevaluate the way we process information and not let our own personal prejudices cloud our judgment on to what is real and what is not. And what would really help is having a resource like the Impressive Foundation, which has a website and we have what I'm calling a SAN, right? A semi-autonomous response network, which allows you to search for automated responses or make it automated responses using AI to respond to stuff, because you don't have the time and I don't have the time to be writing paragraphs of information debunking shit. AI does, though. Give a shit. AI will do a fairly good job of it, and you can use that to respond on any given forum, whether it's a newspaper article comments, or whether it's the comment section, on a news site, or whether it's Facebook or even Twitter or whatever you apply your trade. I think that would be a really useful facet of building that foundation, along with paying content creators to create content that is true and informative. And me and my other YouTubers, we do obsess over trying to get things right, and I know just how mortified I am when I say come out with something and then I find out after the video that it's not true. I know that Phil is absolutely mortified if he gets something wrong, like he put something in a tweet and it's not exactly right. Tansky's the same, and maybe it's just the way our brains are created, but we can't let it lie. I will stay up awake at night going, shit, I need to correct that mistake that I've made. The other side They don't have that same compulsion. In fact, they know they're lying, so they're not asked. They've got no morality behind it. But there you go. Burn it all, start again. No, gee, we don't need to burn everything. That will leave a lot of people homeless. What we need to do is we need to get a grip of what's happening. The left need to start working together like never before. We need to overcome our petty differences. We need to stop the purity tests. We need to stop thinking in terms of we need 100% of what I want or we get nothing. We get Tories forever. 100% of what I want or Tories forever. They're the only two options. And we need to get people engaged in this sort of stuff because they want to be engaged, not to force them into engagement, but to, almost coax them into acknowledging that we've got a big job to do, peeps. We've got a big job to do. We've got to try and stymie the effects of climate change, which are happening right now, and we've got to do what we can to fight against them. And unlike when the aliens attack in movies, and if that happened in real life, I could do nothing. I can't fight a jet. I can't operate a nuclear bomb. Unlike that scenario, climate change is something where we can all do our little bit. We can all do a little bit, which is wonderful. I mean, it means that we have a motivation, a goal for an entire species to work towards together, no matter your race, religion, what country you're from, what language you speak. It's something that unites us all. And that's what we've been looking for all these years, and it's here. I mean, it's not great that it's something that is going to be so deadly, but if it wasn't, then it wouldn't bring everyone together in the same way. But we need to drown out those voices that want climate change to happen and point them out and say, you want this to happen because it's good for your bottom line. And whether that's the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, 55 Tufton Street, Civitas, the Taxpayers Alliance, or whoever it is who's these fronts for these massive oil firms that make all their money out of getting people to burn an energy source that we do not need. We don't need oil to burn anymore. We've got the tech. We can do this. If we moved forward against climate change on a war footing, like we did in World War World War II is a better example, mobilize, spend shitloads of money getting all this stuff sorted, getting the infrastructure built as we did in World War II, getting the radar stations and the airstrips and the planes and the Spitfires and the Lancaster bombers, getting all those fucking things built. And we did it because we had to, because the Earth faced an existential, well, actually the Earth didn't at the time. I mean, Britain faced an existential threat. Yeah, just multiply that by the 197 countries of the world. Yeah, that's what we're facing. And we need to go into this thinking we need to get this sorted in 5 years. We've got 5 years to get this sorted, or things are going to get even worse and even worse. And we might hit tipping point after tipping point after tipping point and get to a point where, yes, we do make the Earth unlivable. It could happen. Anyway, right, so heading off now. I've been yakking on for 1 hour and 13 minutes, which is ridiculous. It's a long time to be talking. But yeah, I'm going to get on with my day. I'll be back tomorrow with another mystery brew from a mystery location somewhere in the world. And I'll tease you at that. And on Friday, I'm just going to let you know now there won't be a mystery brew on Friday. I've got to get up and out very early, so I won't be able to do one. Sorry, no mystery brew on Friday, but there will be one tomorrow. So please join us for that. Thank you very much for the super chat, and thank you very much for joining the chat. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, give us a like on the way out. We've got 52 likes and 101 people watching, so give some more likes. And until next time, I will say thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.